Although many of us might not know much about the Caribbean, we all think of something when we hear the name. Whether it be as a vacation destination, the place all the Americans talk about going on vacation, all those movies, or, in the case of geography nerds like myself, one of the last regions we trip over while trying to remember all the countries. Seriously though, basically every other island here is its own country. Which, of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with. Seriously, you do you guys. However, that doesn't mean that the Caribbean isn't a fascinating place with a deep wealth of history and cultures to learn about. So this is the Caribbean, defined as the islands within the Caribbean Sea, located right between the US and South America, and generally considered part of North America, but that's somewhat debatable. As a region, it consists of 13 independent nations and 17 territories in 4 other countries outside the Caribbean. In decreasing order of population, the fully independent nations are Cuba, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Bahamas, Barbados, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua Barbuda, Dominica, not to be confused with the DR, and St. Kitts and Nevis. Although, if you want to be a bit looser with the definitions, you could also include Guyana and Suriname, seeing as they are both part of Caricom. More on that later in the video. Amongst the territories, the US has Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, the Netherlands has the constituent countries of Aruba, Curacao, and Saint Martin, as well as the cities of Bonaire, Saint Eustatius, and Saba. The France, loving as always to get involved with other countries that have the in their names, has Saint-Barthélemy and their side of Saint-Martin. And finally, the UK gets the lion's share, with Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, Montserrat, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. Which, by the way, fun fact, once recently almost became part of Canada. Also, Colombia and Venezuela own many smaller islands in the region as well, with Colombia actually owning quite a few that are literally right next to Nicaragua. Before European colonization, many of the islands in the Caribbean were inhabited by native groups, most notably the Taino. This, however, would change after the arrival of Columbus in 1492, and his subsequent voyages to the region. The Taino had inhabited these lands for thousands of years, but unfortunately, they would be wiped out by disease and put into forced labor, with their population on Hispaniola alone decreasing from around 500,000 to 14,000. The Taino today are generally considered extinct, though many communities have popped up in recent years claiming to have Taino ancestry, these groups known as the Neo Taino. The Spanish established colonies on these islands, such as Santo Domingo and Havana, and even expanding up into Florida. Well, maybe that's not much of a feat, they were also expanding everywhere else. Despite the presence of piracy in the area, these colonies thrived, and by the 17th century, Spain would be joined by other European powers, including England, France, the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Brandenburg, and even Lithuania and the Knights Hospitaller. Spain originally came in search of gold and silver, and while there wasn't much of that in the area, the islands did have one key advantage for the Europeans, in that they were warm enough to support certain cash crops that couldn't be grown in Europe. After totally failing to farm tobacco here, sugarcane plantations were set up and the industry quickly boomed. This, however, facilitated another not-so-sweet industry, the transatlantic slave trade. From the 16th through the 19th centuries, the European powers set up the transatlantic slave trade, which saw around 12 million Africans imported to the Americas as slaves. Of the 10 or so million who survived the journey across the Atlantic, 5 million ended up in the Caribbean, about the same as ended up in South America, and over 10 times as many as ended up in the US, resulting in a huge demographic shift in the population of the islands, which can still be seen to this day. Nearing the end of the slave trade, and during a time when slavery was gradually being phased out, many slaves repeatedly revolted against the plantation owners, with one such uprising on the French colony of Saint-Domingue on Hispaniola, resulting in the independence of Haiti. Although the new republic wasn't exactly received all that positively on the world stage at first. As the abolition of slavery began to spread, however, as well as many other factors, the value of these colonies to their empires started to diminish, and during the 19th and 20th centuries, numerous different island colonies broke off from their empires. Though many former British colonies still maintain membership in the Commonwealth, Oh yeah, and one of them also got into this really weird relationship with the US, and by the 1960s had become communist. As a result of all this though, today Caribbean culture is very much influenced by Western European and West African cultures. English is spoken by a wide variety of nations, though Spanish, French, and Dutch are of course also spoken, with Cuba, PR, the DR, Haiti, the French territories, and several others being also considered part of Latin America. Many, however, also speak Creole versions of their colonial tongues, with some of the most notable including Haitian Creole and Jamaican Patois. Naturally, Christianity is also ubiquitous in these parts, though religions like Voodoo are also common in countries like Haiti, having originated in West Africa. Now I realize I probably oversimplified the history way too much, but I also wanted to make sure we had time to talk about other stuff. Seriously, if I were to cover the complete history of the Caribbean, we'd be here all day. All these nations, however, are all pretty small and close together, resulting in many different international collaborative efforts, such as Caricom and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, whose fully independent member states plus Anguilla all use a single currency, the East Caribbean dollar. Caricom, or the Caribbean Community, is an organization made up of 15 member states, 5 non-independent associate states, and 8 observer states, including the US territory of Puerto Rico, though interestingly not the US itself. The organization is based in Georgetown, Guyana, and was established in 1973 with the goal of inter-member cooperation and economic integration. The treaty was signed on the 4th of July 1973, and as a result, the 4th of July is celebrated as Caricom Day. Let's now talk about the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, or OEX. Based in the St. Lucian capital of Castries, the OECS has similar responsibilities to Caricom, serving as a political and economic union between its 7 members and 4 associates, advocating human rights, better governments, and disaster relief. Because, as anyone who lives in the Western Atlantic knows, this area is very much prone to hurricanes, and as a result, these nations often need to bear the brunt of these disasters. Though not Barbados, but that's probably just because they did that. So that was kind of an admittedly abridged overview of what the Caribbean is like, at least in terms of history, culture, and politics. If you want more information about the region, Geography Now has some good videos for you to watch. When you think about it, this region is actually kind of the opposite of Central Asia in a lot of ways, mainly in that it's a group of tropical islands all clustered together in a small space, and there are 30 different territories to talk about, as opposed to the 5 I covered in the Central Asia video. Thanks as always for watching. This topic has actually been requested quite a bit, so I'm glad to have finally gotten the chance to make it. As always, you can support the channel by liking and sharing this video, or even by supporting me on Patreon, like these awesome folks here. And be sure to subscribe to learn something new every Sunday.